Hi, I'm Stuart Broadley, CEO of the EIC and organiser of the Energy Exports Conference. You are about to see a really fascinating interview with Sir Ian Wood, Chairman of the Energy Transition Zone. The Energy Transition Zone has a clear vision to reposition this region, which is in northeast Scotland, from the oil and gas capital of Europe to the net zero energy capital of Europe, through utilising long-established connections across the globe, sharing knowledge, and through its expertise. Owing to Aberdeen's world-class oil and gas industry, this region is home to a large proportion of the world's subsea engineering capability and is home to the highest concentration of energy supply chain companies anywhere in the UK, making it ideally positioned to support the vital diversification into new and green energies. So Ian, lovely to see you again. Thanks as ever for all your support for the Energy Exports Conference. You've actually supported the event since it first started.
Since it started.
I know.
I remember the first one.
I know. Thank you so much. So today we do it as a recorded interview, and thank you again for doing that.
Okay.
So you're many things, including chairman of the Energy Transition Zone, which I think celebrates 2 years this year. How's that going?
It's almost, well, I think it is actually 2 years, 2 years coming up now. I mean, I'm a canny guy. It's actually going really well. We've got some really good people, really good management team. And it's taken probably about 18 months to begin to have any real impact, but it is now having real impact. We've got some good potential clients, keen on getting involved, and yeah, it's going to go well.
So you mentioned oil and gas, so let's get into oil and gas, shall we? You've got an amazing career and you've worked all over the world, run, of course, Wood Group, set up and run Wood Group. So you know what it's like to be a global business. And I think one of the great definitions of a successful industry that's kind of set up out of one energy hub and then is seen around the world is if you travel to all the other energy hubs of the world and you keep meeting people. And that absolutely is happening, isn't it? Because wherever you go in the world, you will meet Scots who are involved in the oil and gas industry. Isn't that the great definition of a successful global strategy? So oil and gas. How is oil and gas going in Scotland today?
Well, there's very significant transition taking place. I mean, oil and gas has been incredibly successful. We've had 50 years in Aberdeen, and we've grown it from virtually nothing to be a meaningful international player. So we can all feel very good about that. We're now clearly facing, and understandably, we're facing the issue of climate and climate change. Our government have been, frankly, over-enthusiastic, significantly over-enthusiastic in applying this EPL. It's going to use the... I actually don't understand why they haven't revised it, because it's now obvious that it's not working. There's a lot of developments which otherwise might have taken place have already been shelved. And some of the new significant field developments, they're not going to go ahead either. Now, our understanding is that government are beginning to realise that. We've got carbon capture and storage, which is another big issue, which for some reason we'd made a very good start with Acorn. Unfortunately, we didn't get into the top two. I didn't really understand that. Actually, I saw all the papers and documents, and I still don't understand why they didn't get into the top two. Anyway, they're really working hard for that now, but frankly, we're running out of time.
UK has a legally binding 2050 net zero target. Scotland has a 2045 net zero target, which includes a requirement to achieve 75% of that by 2030. Here we are now rushing through 2023. Are these targets at risk in your view?
Sadly, I think the answer is yes. I think the 2031 is definitely at risk. I mean, 2045 is a long way away. But for a number of reasons, we will be struggling to get the 2030 objective. But that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't be doing everything we possibly can to try and achieve that. And frankly, that's just part of the interaction and the intercourse with the strong negative opinions. We can do a lot to get towards that, but I don't think we'll make it.
So is it going to be helpful to start having the, if you want to call it, adult discussion about we might not get there, and then have proper discussions about what do we do about that? Or do you think the reality is we're going to continue for a while longer to be saying we just need to do it, and how are we going to accelerate? So it's acceleration versus accepting we might not do it, and then what are we going to do about that?
No, your first line there is the right line. I mean, we should be saying that there's a number of things we can do, really quite significant things we can do to cut back on the amount of carbon being produced. So we've got to say that very, very clearly, and keep saying that, and without getting into the argument about should we have oil and gas or not. I mean, the fact is we cannot do without oil and gas.
Let's talk about offshore wind, because you mentioned offshore wind a little bit as well. Amazing offshore wind potential in the UK, and of course the ScotWind ambition around the Scottish coastline is incredibly exciting. Just how great is the potential for Scotland and for the supply chain?
We've got to capitalise on that as quickly as we reasonably can, and that's going to involve clearer thinking in terms of understanding what we don't know. I was involved in the committee last year, and the whole objective there was to say, how do we get fields down to 5 years? And that's actually possible if we can get the right kind of collaborative thinking taking place, and if we can get the UK and Scotland to work together, and that would be a big plus.
So obviously you're very knowledgeable of Scotland's and the UK's and the world's energy supply chain, having been part of it, either running a large business or providing orders to many of the supply chain, or just often being involved in policy making in many ways as well. What's your view right now of the strength of Scotland's energy supply chain and the potential? I mean, we've talked here about so many different technology opportunities: hydrogen and carbon capture and offshore wind, oil and gas, decarbonised oil and gas, electrifying oil and gas, and so on. This all sounds like a massive opportunity. How do we make the most of this?
It is a massive opportunity, and I'm afraid, I mean, we're not making as much of it as we should yet. So I mean, there's a lot of good people working on all kinds of thoughts and different ideas. There's a very competitive market out there. I mean, the worst thing that could happen, frankly, is that we have a very exciting start to what we're trying to do, but most of the work goes overseas. That would be tragic. And I really hope that won't. I hope that won't happen. I think right now I'm going to give us a 50% pass mark. We have a lot to do to get on top of some of the more tricky things, and frankly, it's all about technology.
Mm-hmm. What would you say if you were sitting now with the Energy Minister about what you think they need to do to address these issues?
Well, first of all, they've got to get the tax position right. I mean, they really have got that wrong, and they are going to have to find a clever way to. And there is a clever way, and that's the trigger price. They have to get that right. They have to focus heavily on carbon capture. That's the two most important single things I believe they can do right now. But they are focused on technology. I mean, they clearly are. They know the key things to be done. We've got, honestly, if we could get England, if we could get Scotland and the UK to work together, that would be a big step ahead.
Yeah. Do you think, for instance, you would advise invest in oil and gas right now because it's an important market, and slow down investments in other technologies because the opportunities are slower and later than we thought? Or is it the opposite, which is your technology is critical to accelerating the transition. So,
it's the opposite. I mean, I really believe. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we stop oil and gas. We don't. We can't. We absolutely can't. But we do need to. We do need to maximise the opportunities on the other side of the fence. And actually, that's not difficult because the two are related. I mean, the oil and gas, the technology, the people, the skills, what have you, is a complete cross mix of what happens on the new energies. So the two of them go hand in glove.
Yeah. So there's still largely opportunity then, isn't there? Because although others may be pressing ahead a bit faster than us, perhaps, it's still a long road, and there's still huge uncertainties in many of the technology answers to the greatest problems, that we've seen in a generation, maybe in 100 years right now. So huge opportunities, right?
There's massive opportunities. I mean, to use an expression I used before, one of the problems we have is that we don't know what we don't know. And Scotland suffers from that. England does to some extent. And again, if we could get these two to start working more hand in hand and doing things, that would be a big plus.
So I guess to wrap up, firstly, thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts on some of these really critical and quite complex issues. Obviously, we're here in the context of the Energy Exports Conference, which is an event which brings together some of the world's key project decision makers and many of the UK's great supply chain innovative business leaders. And we bring together about 1,000 people for 2 days to really work on some of these issues and to convert it into relationships or friendships, into trade, into business opportunities, into domestic and overseas growth. That's ultimately what Energy Exports Conference is about. And you've always been a great supporter of the event. Do you want to touch a bit on what you hope the event will achieve in terms of solving some of these issues? And because also we have policymakers that come to the event as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, maximise peer-to-peer learning of the current challenges in the respective countries and markets. Try and get the right kind of compromise way ahead in oil and gas production in the country. Try and get a balance there. And update on plans and commitments in each of the respective countries' areas against low carbon targets. There's a number of kind of key things like that, the big things. But also, there's a lot of very, very fine, good small companies there. And we just need to ensure that we give them all the backing that we can to get them moving ahead.
Yeah. Okay, well, so Ian, thank you so much for your time. I know you're also hoping to join us for the Thought Leadership Dinner the night before the event, where you'll also get further into some of these topics. So Until then, thank you so much.
Thank you.